Assalamu alaikum, people. I am here. So today is September the 13th, I think. I am on the tail end of my COVID quarantine. Alhamdulillah, I'm feeling much better. Much better. But I have a commitment, right? We're supposed to be doing book reading. So I am going to keep my commitment of doing the book reading today and talking a little bit about the chapter, which is very appropriate because it is a tool in my tool belt that I used when I got COVID. So if you do not know, you should know if you've been following me. I got COVID last week, and it is the first time that I've had COVID in the whole 3 years. I have been able to avoid it. But it finally got me. So alhamdulillah, I'm sure I had a very mild case of COVID because it was like a really bad flu. It didn't last a very long time. Only I started having symptoms on Monday, and Wednesday night was the worst of it. But alhamdulillah, Thursday morning, I felt like 70% better, thanks to trying to sweat it out and letting my body do what it does. Our body has an amazing ability to heal itself. I was actually speaking to my daughter, and I was like, your body don't want to die. It's going to do whatever it can to help you live. So with all things well, if you take care of your health, then when you are sick, your body will have an innate ability to heal itself. And it does that in a variety of ways, right? So alhamdulillah, a lot of the things that I do on a regular basis, I'm sure contributed to my body's ability to heal itself. Because being healthy doesn't mean that you're not going to get sick. It means that when you do get sick, your body actually has the ability to counter that sickness and heal itself. So I am not going to spend this entire time talking about my COVID experience. I have a couple more posts that I'm going to put up around that. But we are going to talk about fasting today, and it was actually one of the tools in the tool belt. So inshallah, once you learn a little bit more about exactly how fasting works, it's more than just about starving yourself of food. It will be a tool in your toolbox that you can use when it is appropriate. So chapter 2 of the book is called, Insta people. Chapter 2 is called Eat, Stop, Eat, Intermittent Fasting. I made this the number 1 of the 4 protocols. So just as a super quick review, my book, MR40 Method, which I wrote, I believe, like 4 years ago. 3 years ago, which I wrote 3 years ago. I am in the process of doing a rewriting of it. So we are going to do, we are going to add, because since I've written it, I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot, not just from research, even new research that has come out around some of these protocols, but I've also learned a lot in terms of its practicality, because it is what I teach my clients. And having taught hundreds of women how to use these protocols to restore their health, I've learned a lot on the practical side of things as well. And so that is the goal, is to rewrite it so that it can become both more information, more knowledge, not information, because we don't just need information, we need knowledge, things that's actually true, that's applicable, that is going to change the way that your health is. So in terms of fasting, it is number 1 of the 4 protocols that I use inside of my program. And it is the number one thing. I tell people fasting is the default, right? It is the default, right? In terms of health, it is the default. If you don't know where to start in helping you to restore your health, start with fasting, right? And I am going to be very clear on the difference between, I'm not necessarily talking about Islamic fasting. We'll talk about that a little bit as well and how it differs from intermittent fasting, but fasting itself, meaning going without food, right? Oftentimes, particularly as Muslims, right, we always are, oh, well, the Prophet ate this and the Prophet ate that and the Prophet ate this. Prophet really didn't eat all that stuff all the time. If you want to eat like the Prophet, eat less and eat less often. That's really the foundation of prophetic eating, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did what they did during that time in that part of the world. He ate one meal on average a day and a snack, right? So when people say, oh, well, it's a sunnah to eat dates every day, the date was the meal. The date was the meal. He was not having a date in the morning before he had his pancakes, eggs, and syrup and orange juice, right? He wasn't having a date in the morning before he ate his breakfast, whatever that breakfast may or may not have been, right? The date was actually the meal. And that is where I think we misapply the sunnah. But I'm getting on a rant. That's just my own personal pet peeve. So I'm gonna pull it back. Pull it back. And we're gonna talk about fasting. I'm gonna try to stay on task and stay on fasting. All right. Eat, stop, eat. This is actually a pretty long chapter, and I try to keep these lives not so long. So it's not a super long chapter. It's like 12 pages or something like that. So I'm not going to read the whole 12 pages. You'll have to wait till the whole book come out. But I do want to kind of like give you a gist of why I wrote this as a part of the protocol. So intermittent fasting is a nutritional protocol that has gained a lot of popularity lately, right? So it's gained a lot of popularity because even though we have been doing this for thousands of years, right? Allah tells us in the Quran that he has prescribed fasting for us as he has prescribed it for those before us. So all of the people before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there was some form of fasting. In every major religion, we find that there's some form of fasting, whether it is fasting for a straight 24 hours or fasting and sacrificing particular foods, right? Every form, Christianity, Judaism, even those religions who are not considered Abrahamic faiths also have fasting. So I'll just quickly read this. Fasting isn't limited to the Abrahamic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Many spiritual lifestyles and philosophy practice fasting, including Buddhism, Taoism, Jainism, and Hinduism. It has been used as a mean of spiritual renewal, mental clarity, and physical cleansing for centuries, right? So as science and research develop, many people began looking at things that have been traditionally working well and say, let's see why this works on a physiological basis. So that is actually where the curiosity of fasting and how it helps us comes from, right? So I believe intermittent fasting as the first line of defense and offense against obesity and a wide range of health ills. Among the multitude of health benefits fasting provides, there are four main reasons why I include intermittent fasting as a part of the MR40 method. Number one, it is the simplest way to jumpstart fat burn. Simply skipping a meal can get your fat burning gears turning and prime your body for weight loss. Number 2, it both starts and accelerates ketosis, and in essence, hacks your keto diet to get faster results. And number 3, it increases human growth hormone, which maintains and builds muscle. This paired with the MR40 method exercise protocol can result in long-term increase of the metabolism by increasing muscle mass, allowing you to lose weight and keep it off permanently. And number 4, it improves insulin sensitivity, leading to a multitude of health benefits, including reducing inflammation and staving off diabetes. All right, so we're rewriting. I think people take things very literally. So what I am going to change in version 2 is that number 4 benefit definitely goes as number 1 benefit. The number 1 reason for intermittent fasting is its effect on improving insulin sensitivity. That is definitely number 1 benefit. So there's a couple of misnomers about fasting. Number 1, many people who are not very well versed on the physiological aspect of fasting will tell you or will say the reason why fasting works is because you're eating less calories. Nope, that's not why fasting works. So let's remove some myths first, and then let's go into the truths of it, right? So fasting does not work in improving your health because you are eating less calories. Some people do eat less calories when they fast, right? That can be a good and a bad thing, but that's not why fasting works. They have done many research studies, right? So there is a amazing book that I'm constantly referring people to. If you follow me for any time, you've probably heard me tell you to go read it. It is called The Circadian Code by Sachin Panda, right? I actually began reading that book because I was doing some research around sleep, and come to find out that this book, like, it's about sleep, but half of it is literally about intermittent fasting and how it affects our health. The reason why fasting works, I'm going back, is not because you're eating less calories. There's research studies where they literally took the exact same amount of calories, gave it to both subjects, right? Gave it to the subjects, same amount of calories. The only change they made was the feeding window. Changing the feeding window made the biggest impact on health, regardless of calories. So again, I want to reiterate that. Fasting does not work for your health because you're eating less calories. That is one of the biggest misnomers about fasting, okay? So inside of the book, The Circadian Code, Sachin Panda, by the way, is a Nobel Peace Prize winning author who discovered melanopsin, which is a cell that literally not just our sleep has a circadian code, but every organ in our body, right? It's a cell that actually allows every organ in our body to have a 24-hour circadian code, which means your liver is more active certain parts of the day and less active later part of the day. Your brain is more active in certain parts of the day and less active. Your spleen, your stomach, your digestive system, all of that has its own circadian code. So when it comes to fasting in this book, right, and this is a study that he quotes on that they did on mice, but it has been repeated on human beings. So it is verified that this is also an effect on human beings. They took two group of mice and they literally gave them the exact same diet. And they simulated a SAD diet, standard American diet. What makes a diet a SAD diet? When it is both high fat and high carbohydrate, right? Those two combination is like poison for people, right? When we think of the standard American diet, it is both high fat and high carbohydrate, okay? So they gave the mice a standard American diet. They put the same amount of food, same amount of calories, same amount of macronutrients inside of the cage with one group of mice to allow them to graze 24 hours a day. They were able to eat whenever they wanted, how much they wanted, right? But they were still eating the same amount of calories. They took the other group of mice and they only allowed them to eat in a timed window. So they took the food away from them for, this is also, by the way, where the most popular 16/8 calendar for fasting comes from, right? So they took the food away 16 hours and they only made it available 8 hours a day. Both mice ate the exact same thing, the exact same calories, the exact same macronutrients, and it was not a healthy diet. So this is not a justification for you. Let me just say, this doesn't mean that you need to eat a healthy diet. You don't need to eat a healthy diet. But the interesting thing about it was that it was not considered a healthy diet. It was the standard American diet, right? A diet that we are pretty sure creates disease and metabolic dysfunction. At the end of the study, the mice who grazed all day long, they had no restriction on the time of day that they ate, they indeed developed diabetes, heart disease, and became overweight. The other group of mice who only ate in an 8-hour time window, even though they were eating the exact same thing, and it was actually not healthy, they did not develop any of those diseases. And in fact, some of them improved their health outcome simply by changing not what they ate, but the time that they ate. This is also a study that has been repeated in human beings, right? So we know the most powerful impact of your health is stop eating all the darn time. Stop eating all the time, okay? This is why I'm always telling people, stop snacking, eat a full meal, stop grazing. Grazing is not just about you're eating more calories. Grazing is about every single time you put food in your mouth to digest, your insulin level is going up, even if it's low carb, right? Every time you're eating, you're constantly going to have an up and down, up and down. And then if that thing that you are eating is causing insulin spikes multiple times a day, that is what deteriorates your health, right? So fasting is about eating in a specific time window. It is not about, so here's important, right? We'll get to the what to eat in the next chapter. But when it comes to fasting, we are talking about not what you eat. We are specifically talking about when you eat. Again, not what you eat, when you eat. We'll talk about the what later, right? If we can get the when down, then doing the what is just going to enhance it. It's just going to foretime it. It's just going to make it even better. But let's talk about the what. Let's talk about the when, not the what. So when it comes to fasting, the reason why, very interesting, excuse me, The reason why, excuse me, there is a 16-8 window, which means you go 16 hours without eating anything, and you put all of your meals in an 8-hour window, right? The reason why that exists is because this original study that all other studies were built from, the one that I just mentioned, this is really funny, and I heard this by listening to somebody else's podcast. Huberman Lab podcast. Shout out to Huberman because I love his podcast and I listen to it often. It's very sciencey, so you have to kind of be a research and science nerd if probably to follow it, but definitely recommend a listen for that. So the interesting thing is the reason why that is there's no magic to the 16-8 window. The reason why it's the most popular is because the grad student who worked on this particular study, which was the original study, his or her, right? That's a secret whether it was his or her partner, actually told them they could not be in the lab more than 18 hours. I'm sorry, more than 10 hours. And so the eating window had to stop at 8 hours so that they could leave and go home. So here's to partners setting clear boundaries, right? You've changed the entire world. I think that's quite funny. So we're going to talk about what are the different protocols, right? So here is the other thing about fasting. So we've cleared up the myth that fasting isn't about the fact that you're eating less calories. That's not even what fasting is about. That's not how it affects your health. Second thing is that people say, well, if you fast too much, then you're going to lose muscle, right? You don't lose muscle from fasting. You lose muscle from not eating, right? There is a difference. There is a difference. If you in your mind think fasting is about me reducing calories, right? And I reject that assumption. And you are not actually eating healthy when you are eating, or you're not eating enough when you are eating, it will lead to a deficit in nutrients. Again, fasting is not about reducing calories. Fasting is about your window. So if you think, I'm just confused, there's information everywhere, I can't afford a trainer, I can't do, there's no excuse. It's free. And you literally just make yourself a time window. I don't care what that time window is. Start decreasing how often you eat. That is always step one. All right, so inside of the book, I then break down different protocols. So as we continue in the book, we are both on the same page and clear what is a fasting window and what is the different benefits of different types of fast, right? And when I say different types of fast, I mean different lengths of fast. So intermittent fasting is when you go a specific time with no rise. Okay, so here's a ding, ding, ding. This is really important. Intermittent fasting is when you go a specific length of time without any food or drink that causes a rise in blood glucose. Right? So when people say, well, can I have gum in my fasting window? Can I just have a little bit of tea with some honey in my fasting window? Can I just eat a small snack in my fasting window? The physiological changes that happen in your body is based on your going without food, which drops your insulin and blood glucose. That's where all the magic happens. So if you're having a little bit of sugar, the benefits are going away. Now you're just cutting calories, and that's not fasting, right? You want to drop the blood sugar. So this is why at very base, the only things that you should have during your fasting window is black coffee, no more than 2 cups, green tea, no sweetener, and water, right? Please don't send me 100 questions of this is the tea I drink and this is da. We're not gonna do that. Okay. That's the 3. Just leave it at those 3. Don't make it complicated. Those are the only 3. All right. Everything else is off limit. No, it does not matter if the water is alkaline, if it dripped from an Amazon leaf, does it out? Nope, just water. Doesn't matter. Okay, don't make it complicated. So when it comes to fasting, so this is what, so that we're on the same page. That is what I mean when it comes to intermittent fasting. So what is the minimum amount of time that you can go without food, that you need to go without food to get any health benefit? All right. So just as a side note too, when we are talking about intermittent fasting, the purpose of intermittent fasting is not for you to reduce calories so that you can lose weight. The purpose of intermittent fasting is first and foremost to balance your hormones so that your body can be primed to release fat. Releasing the fat, burning the fat, losing the weight is a side effect. It is not the purpose. The purpose of fasting is to heal metabolic dysfunction. The purpose of fasting is to improve your health, right? It's not the weight loss. The weight loss is a side effect. All right, so let's clarify that. So let's talk about health, right? What is the minimum amount of time that a person should fast? So again, according to research, right? And this is based on the physiology of how the human body works, right? 12 hours is a minimum window. That 12 hours is whether or not you want to lose weight, improve your PCOS, you got diabetes, you running a marathon, you healthy, you just want 12 hours. 12 hours is the minimum. If it's less than 12 hours, it's not intermittent fasting, right? If you say, well, I'm going to start intermittent fasting and I'm going to go from, I'm going to stop eating at 8 p.m. and when I wake up for Fajr at 5:30, I'm going to have my tea with honey. Not fasting. Not intermittent fasting. It's not. Because now you have a 9-hour window of only when you were sleeping, right? Not intermittent fasting. So if you want to improve your health, the very first thing that you can start off with is 12 hours at minimum. Why 12 hours? So this is important, right? Because I don't like giving information and you not understanding why, because it does a couple of things. Number one, you should know how your body works. The reason why we get sucked into temporary diets, skinny teas, waist wrappers, eating disorders is because we actually don't know how our body works on a physiological basis, right? We have done a horrible job as school systems all over the world in teaching people how their body works, which I think is part of something that we should learn in school. The reason why it's 12 hours is because the magic of fasting, right? The health benefits of fasting works when your body makes the shift, right? And if you're going to follow me every Tuesday and we're going to talk, we need to be talking the same language. So the shift is when you go from burning glucose for fuel to burning ketones for fuel, right? So this happens to everybody. It does not matter if you follow a keto diet or not. It happens to everybody. This is why I tongue-in-cheekly, you will see me every Ramadan, and I would say, it's shahrul ketosis, right? Whether you love keto or hate keto, Allah is going to make you go into ketosis. So, anytime you go 12 hours without food, you deplete all of the glucose and glycogen from your blood and your liver, and your body then begins to turn ketones into fuel. What happens when this happens is during this 12-hour window, your blood glucose lowers, right? When that blood glucose lowers, you know what else lowers? Inflammation, right? So people who have gut health problems, autoimmune problems, arthritis, all of these things that cause a very physical inflammation that you identify, all of that decreases when your blood glucose decreases, when your insulin level decreases, right? Because inflammation happens every time your insulin level spikes. So first thing that happens at that 12-hour window. So if you're like, oh, I just have to eat breakfast in the morning. I just have to eat. I have to eat. You technically don't have to eat, but until you are there mentally, you have to eat. Technically don't have to eat breakfast. But if you aren't there mentally, start off with a 12-hour window. Like that's literally just the minimum to maintain your health, going 12 hours without food. Stop eating at 8 p.m. Don't have anything to eat before 8 a.m. Right? That's it. How simple can that be? You can actually start improving your health, right? 8 to 8. Very simple, right? So the second time window that we talk about in the book is the 16-8 time window. That is going 16 hours with no food and putting all of your meals within an 8-hour window. And again, I'm going to keep reiterating that fasting is not about reducing calories. It is about having all of your calories in a specific window, okay? So 16-8, we talked about the original study. This is the most popular window for intermittent fasting because of that original study, because we know according to the research it works, right? But it wasn't chosen because no other time span works, right? It was just chosen out of necessity of the researcher's schedule. So when you do a 16-8, couple of things, does not matter whether or not you're doing it in a day or in the evening, or if you're doing it in the morning. So this is important. When you choose your fasting window, the important thing is obviously your sleep should be a part of that window, right? The most common way to do it is stop eating at 8 p.m., eat your first meal at 12 noon. So you're basically just skipping breakfast. Normally people are like, I have some black coffee for breakfast if I need to caffeine temporarily, because eventually you actually, when your health improves and your energy becomes consistent, you won't even need that coffee in the morning. You do that or have whatever, my green tea with no sweetener in the morning, and then I'll eat lunch at 12 o'clock. Okay, that's absolutely fine. But what happens if you work at night, right? And you're getting off work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Can you shift your window? Because, hey, I actually go to bed at 10 a.m. instead of 10 p.m. Absolutely. Literally count back. So here's the rule. I'm going to give you a really important intermittent fasting rule. Count backwards, right? 2 hours from the time you go to bed. You should have a bedtime. Everybody should have a bedtime. Don't tell me I don't know what time I go to bed. There's a time you go to bed because our body is going to get tired the same time every day. It's called a circadian rhythm. All right. So figure out what time you go to sleep on average, right? You want to stop eating at least 2 hours before that. All right. The reason why we stop eating 2 hours before we go to bed is so that our digestive system can process all of our food and we are not trying to sleep and digest at the same time. That's the first reason, right? The second reason why we want to stop eating 2 hours before we go to bed is because when we eat, and we've said this over and over again, what happens to your blood glucose? Right? Blood glucose goes up. When you eat and cause a blood glucose rise before you go to sleep, it activates your fight or flight nervous system, and it makes sleeping harder, right? If you are a person that says, like, when I go to bed at night, I'm anxious. When I go to bed at night, I only sleep for an hour and then I'm up. When I go to bed at night, I get hot sweats. Start, right? I'm not diagnosing anything. I'm just giving you some options. Start by giving more time between the time that you go to sleep and the time that you eat the last thing. This includes doing things, I got to say this over and over again because apparently a lot of people have tea and honey. This includes eating things, anything that has honey, sugar, anything like that. Why? Because when you go to sleep, you don't want your blood glucose up here. You want your blood glucose to have finished digesting and coming down to its normal levels as you go into your sleep, and you will have a deeper rest, meaning you will experience more REM sleep, you will stay asleep longer, and you will get a better quality of sleep. All right? So that is the reason. There's lots of misnomers out there. People say, oh, you don't have to worry. You can eat carbs at night. That's a whole different story, right? You can eat carbs at night. It's not going to make you gain weight. You can do this at night. It's not going to make you gain weight. All of that has been disproven by research. But for our purposes today, we are specifically talking about health, right? When we are asleep, our metabolic process actually shifts to repair mode, right? We're literally repairing and restoring all the damage that has happened in our body during the day. Not damage that's like unusual or something wrong with you or where you live. This is normal, right? Damage. So an example of that is your sleep is actually clearing out the toxins in your brain. Think of it like during the day, our brain is constantly working, right? And when your brain is constantly working, we are actually having a lot of residual buildup of toxins, right? It's like literally think of kind of like, I don't know, if you're in the United States and you've seen that commercial, it's like a car commercial, and I think it's for car oil. And the engine is going back and forth, and then all of the gunk is building up around the outside of the engine pistons, and it's going to, that's sort of kind of like, think of that visually happening in your brain. Not that the engine is not working, it is working, right? It's doing everything that it's supposed to do, but the gunk kind of like builds up around it, right? When we're sleeping, the engine has stopped, and now our body can go and clear out all of the gunk, right? And get rid of it, right? So this is another reason why when people are sleep deprived, they get brain fog, they can't think clearly, right? Because those toxins are not getting a chance to clear themselves out, right? So when we sleep, it's important that our body can focus on doing all of the repair and restoring that it needs to do. If your body is trying to digest the cookies and ice cream that you had at 10 o'clock, then it is not able to focus its energy on bringing down all of the toxins that it needs to bring down that happen throughout the day, right? So really, really important. Those are for health reasons. You should not be eating more than 2 hours before you're getting ready to go to sleep. That's our 16:8. So 16:8, it's a great window if it's practical for you. but it's not like, oh, you have to. If all you can do is a 14-10, then do 14-10, right? Each time you extend it, it's going to be just a tad bit better. So I'm going to mention one more time, and then we're going to finish the rest of it next week. All right? Because there's two types of intermittent fasting, right? We haven't even gotten into the Islamic fasting yet. I'll do that as a side note next week. There is intermittent fasting, short-term intermittent fasting. Short-term intermittent fasting is when you split up your 24-hour day. Long-term intermittent fasting is when you go more than 24 hours without eating something, right? So 24 hours, there are certain benefits that happen when you go whole 24 hours without eating food. There's certain benefits that happen when you go whole 3 days without eating food, right? There's certain detriments that happen when you go more than 3 days without eating food. We'll talk about that. So that's extended fasting. So I want to get through the short-term fasting part and its benefits. So third way in which people will do short-term fasting is a 24 fasting window, right? That means you're going 20 hours without eating something, and then you eat all your food in a 4-hour window. This is also really common for people who do 1 meal a day, OMAD, O-M-A-D, 1 meal a day, right? This has its own benefits, right? So we look at the benefits based on what your glucose and glycogen is doing in your body, right? 12 hours, you begin to, is right at the point where your liver depletes itself of glycogen and it starts burning ketones. When you go a little bit longer, 14 hours. When you go 16 hours, now other things start happening. HGH, human growth hormone, which is your fat burning hormone, which is your key fat burning hormone, begins to pick up, right? After that. Then inflammation starts to go down, right? And then all of this domino effect. Remember how I'm always telling you that insulin is a domino hormone? Insulin is a hormone. It's not just for diabetics. Everybody has insulin. This is the effect that it has on your insulin level. So 24 is a third way that people do short-term fasting. So inshallah, next week, we will get into what is considered extended fast, right? These are when you're going more than 24 hours fasting. And we will also just touch very slightly. I'm not going to go into detail because I literally do an entire workshop on this every Ramadan. The difference between Islamic fast and intermittent fasting. So thank you for listening to this week's rewrite of my book, The MR40 Method. Inshallah, I hope that as we rewrite this book together, I can get it rewritten and out to you by the beginning of next year. We will see. I hope you got benefit from what we talked about today and knowledge that you can use. I always say that I want people to have more tools in their tool belt in their journey of health and wellness, right? So as we go forward and try to improve, it is a journey, right? It's not a destination. It's not just what we're doing for the next 30 days or the 90 days. This is a destination. It is a journey. It's not a destination. It is a journey of health and wellness. So I want you to understand like how these tools actually help you, because in our internet, this, as we all are navigating Al Gore's internet, I'm dating myself by saying Al Gore's internet. Let me know if you know what I mean when I say Al Gore's internet. You got to be of a certain age to understand that reference. So, as we are navigating Al Gore's internet, I want you to be able to look at something and say, that just don't seem like it sounds right. Because I don't think our body works that way. Because I remember Sister Mubaraka saying, right? That's what I want you to do. I want you to be able to like, well, now I know that people that go around saying fasting just cuts calories don't know what fasting does on a physiological level, right? So you can take the good and you can leave the rest. All right, inshallah, I will speak to you guys next week. Thank you for all of your du'as while I have been recovering from COVID. And inshallah, I hope all of this is going to be beneficial for you in improving your health. All right, assalamu alaikum.